It is yours.
Okay, are we ready? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jay Tisman. I'm president of the Lincoln Democratic Club this year. And I want to welcome you all to the April meeting of our club. And the Placer County Democratic Central Committee and the California Democratic Committee has suggested that we remember that we are residing on the traditional lands of the Nisinian people. And just to bear that in mind, those are the people that lived here before we lived here and all these houses were built. We have a very extensive program tonight. We have a wonderful speaker that's in store for us, but we have several folks here who are going to report on some of the activities of the Lincoln Democratic Club and to keep us filled in on what we are doing to advance the causes and beliefs and standards that we hold. So first person would be Bill Lorentzen. Is Bill available? Is he here? Is Bill here?
I actually don't see Bill yet.
Okay. All right, well, we can have that one wait then. Hopefully Bill will show up and give us an update on the redistricting process, which is a big deal really because of the census changes. It's going to affect our boundaries of our congressional districts and many other governmental districts. So hopefully Bill will be able to fill us in on what's going on there. We have Barbara Smith here is ready to talk to us about Placer Perspective. Barbara?
Hi, thank you very much for allowing time for me to join you this evening. My name is Barbara Smith. I know many of you and I've visited with many of you at different meetings. I am the chair of the Community Engagement Committee for our Placer County Democratic Party Central Committee. And so in that regard, I'm coming to you with an activity that we have put together that is a writing group, and it is called Placer Perspectives. And because I'm meeting, coming here in April rather than in March, I have an opportunity to actually do what I refer to as a twofer, because not only have we taken the Placer Perspectives model for the county of Placer, but we're actually taking this model multi-county in what we call the Writers Alliance. So as I'm speaking along about Placer Perspectives, I'm also sort of giving you the background of what the Writers Alliance is. And poor Rick, who has probably heard this, I have no idea how many times. He could probably do the presentation for me at this point, but he's like, no, I don't want to do that. But anyway, basically the whole purpose of Placer Perspectives and the Writers Alliance is dedicated to responding to news events, actions of our public officials, as well as to promote progressive policy solutions to community problems. And our primary way of doing that will be writing.
Oops.
We lost you. Barb, we lost you.
I see that. All of a sudden it went whoop, like that, and I saw the red. Okay, I'm not sure where I lost you, but I was talking about the writing group and what we're doing. Primarily, we're working at putting together letters to the editor. We're also involved in social media. And the good thing about social media is that you don't have to wait for a newspaper to publish you. You can publish yourself. And so we can do that via Twitter, we can do that via Facebook, we can do that on Instagram. And as I'm trying to pull in some of the younger people, I'd love to get them in on TikTok, because people will watch a video of somebody reading something versus actually reading it themselves. And so lots of times that's a great way to get the word out. So the whole Placer Perspectives Writer Alliance is based around a task group configuration. We have coordinators, and when we go multi-county, we'll have coordinators in each county that will work together to help the task groups work together. We'll have a task group of writers, of researchers, of editors, of social media, what I like to call the social media cadre, and then also responders. Responders are really important because they are the people that go on the Facebook articles and post positive responses, go on Twitter and retweet with comments positively on the things that people have written. As I've said sometimes before, for those of you who have heard me talk about writing, I generally, when I get something published in one of the local newspapers, Gold Country Media has been very kind in publishing me multiple times. I've been published multiple times in the Sacramento Bee as well, and also papers throughout CD4. I make a point of not reading the comments that people add on after something's been published, because usually they're incredibly vicious, and they don't ever often discuss the actual content of your letter. They just want to trash you personally. And so that's why having somebody else go on and post those supportive comments, even if it's 2 or 3 sentences, you know, I agree with so-and-so and here's why. That's all you need to do. You don't engage with the trolls, but you do post the positive comments. It makes a huge difference. And every time you do that, it brings that, you know, according to the way the algorithms work, it pops it up for other people to see. So that's a really important task group within the Writers Alliance and Placer Perspectives. And I anticipate as we get into this, those task groups are going to kind of blend, because writers and responders are, you know, they're really good. Lots of people who do research are also very good editors and so on. So I anticipate that that will happen. What I do also want to talk about is that I have 2 writing seminars coming up that I have put together that are sponsored by both Sierra Forward, El Dorado Dems, and also the El Dorado Progressives. And so I am going to be doing a essentially how to write effective letters, how to write effective social media posts. And so I have a seminar on that. And then I have a second seminar where I show how we're going to put this task group together and how they are going to be effective. And I kind of go through
time restrictions here. So
of course, I'm going to put some links into the chat for you. And I am always available on Facebook, or you can direct message me, or if you really want to get in touch with me, call Rick and he'll give you my phone number. So great. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Please check out the chat. I will put that information in there for you.
Thanks so much, Barbara. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. Is Susan Gutowski here?
Yes, she is.
Is she is? Okay.
Yeah.
Susan, you're going to speak for us on the Legacy program?
Great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Susan Gutowski. I'm here representing your Placer County Democratic Party Central Committee. I'm an elected representative for District 4, and I'm the fundraising chair. Additionally, I am the representative for Assembly District 6 for California Democratic Party. How many here have ever heard of the Blue Legacy Circle or know what the Blue Legacy Circle is? Oh, good. Okay, great. So the Blue Legacy Circle is how we as a party designate our monthly donors. Those are people who contribute monthly to our party. The reason that those donations are so important are, especially in off years like this year, non-election years, we really need to build up our war chest so we can properly support our candidates for 2022. It's one of the many things that we do as a central committee. We have about 4 major focuses. One, Barbara just spoke about: community engagement, community awareness, reaching out to new Democrats who have moved to our district. We also provide candidate services and training for candidates. We financially support our candidates, and we also advance progressive values in this very conservative district. Is it possible for me to share my screen? I have just one slide I wanted to show, if that's okay.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Sorry, just give me a second here, because I popped in right when Barbara was talking. Okay, I just wanted to give you a brief update of, okay, those of you who are monthly donors or maybe thinking about donation, here is our results, like the quick and dirty. How many people we had run for office, how many people we were able to support, our win ratio, which is, you know, pretty good, 66% in a plus 11 Republican district. And as you can see, Lincoln has 2 new Democrats elected besides Bill. So anyway, those are some of the things we do. And then let me just show you what we're looking here to do. We're hoping to gain 15 more seats in Placer County in 2022. And we've also expanded and increased our voter registration. We have a new voter registration chair and a co-chair who I think are going to do a really great job for us, in addition to all of our great officers and committee chairs, of which Barb is one. So if you are thinking about, I hope you'll think about being a monthly donor, supporting what our party does. You get this handy dandy little pin, and what that entails, preferential seating and first come first serve for our in-person events, which I will give a plug for. Our first in-person event is going to be October 14th at the Flower Farm in Loomis. We're going to have actually a Placer County-wide celebration. So please mark your calendar for that. And I will include a link in the chat if you decide you'd want to become a monthly donor. Or another plug, I'm also always looking for people to help with fundraising. If you're interested at all in fundraising, being a part of the fundraising committee, love to talk with you about that. So thanks so much for your time, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate all the info. And we're gonna move on to some information on the upcoming possibility of having a recall for our governor. And we got some info on that. It appears that there may be a recall election this fall to recall Gavin Newsom. And if he gets more votes than the other candidates, if he does not get more votes than the other candidate, he could be replaced by a Republican who will get many fewer votes. And the way it works is that Newsom needs to get 50% plus one of the question, should he be recalled? And he needs to have, let's see, it's 50 plus one no votes so that he would not be recalled. If he does not get 50% plus one vote, then the people who voted that yes, he should be recalled will then be able to vote on who they would like to have replace him. And the candidate, Gavin Newsom, cannot run for governor again if he has been recalled. So if you remember the Gray Davis situation a number of years ago, he was recalled and there were 100 candidates who were running to replace him. And of course, none of those candidates are going to get majorities. However, with Gray Davis, there was one candidate that was a rock star, and you know who that was Arnold. And so Arnold got the votes because he was well known, and most of the other people on the ballot were unknown people. So it may be that we end up with a governor, if Newsom is recalled, we may end up with a governor that no one really knows or has ever really heard of. The good news is that we have a lot of accomplishments over the past few years for our governor. And additionally, the recall campaign, to tell the truth, was being fueled by the Republican coalition of anti-maskers and anti-vaxxers and anti-immigrant, QAnon, conspiracy folks, and Trump supporters. And a lot of out-of-state money is coming in to see if they can get rid of Gavin Newsom. So we need to pitch in and get the word out that every no vote on the recall is needed. And what we need is to remember the question is, should he be recalled? And the answer that we hope that you will have will be no. Please do not recall him, because that will save us a world of trouble and world of problems.
Jay,
So,
I have a question on that.
yeah.
Right. So on the ballot, are the other candidates on there? So if somebody says yes.
So it all happens, bang, right like that.
Yeah.
They're all right there. And you remember Gray Davis, you looked at that list of people and you never heard of any of those people. And a lot of them are just doing it for a joke. And unfortunately, that's the situation that we're looking at here. There is a program that is going to clarify this, and it's going to be May 13th at 6:30. The Democratic response is a program called Stop the Recall. And I'm not sure when or where this presentation is going to be, but we will get the information out to you so that you can look at the arguments against the recall. And we're getting out the message to vote no on the recall. And that's all I can tell you at this time. But we'll have more info for you as time goes on. Okay. Thank you. That was quick. Ooh.
I have another question, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
So say you have friends or wherever in California, like in San Diego or down in San Jose, can we invite these people to that May 13th?
I'm not sure what media this May 13th media is going to be, whether it's going to be online or what. We haven't got any more information than that. So we will be letting you know. And obviously, if it's online or on Zoom or something, you can certainly participate.
Yeah, because the more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Thanks.
That's where we're standing at this point. Okay, we're going to move to Lynn now. Lynn is going to introduce our featured speaker for this evening, which we'd all have been looking forward to. Lynn? Is she there?
Yes, I am. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Jay. It's wonderful to see everyone and to see our guest here. We have anyone who's been subscribing and reading the Sacramento Bee last week and this week realizes that every other day there's an important thing about the about California wildfire. And so who better should we have than Daniel Berlant from CalFire with us tonight. Mr. Berlant has grown up here in Auburn. He's a product of Auburn schools, including Placer High School. He is a graduate of the University of California, Davis. He's a member of the Auburn Kiwanis. He's married to his wife, Kristen, who, like him, grew up here in Auburn. Dan has been a member of the Auburn City Council and served as its mayor in 2020. As a lifelong Auburn resident, he has a long history of service in the community and region as a public safety official, as well as a former school board trustee. With over a decade in public safety, Dan serves California's fire department, CalFire, as an assistant deputy director overseeing many of the state's fire prevention programs. So Dan, will you please talk to us about fire in the foothills?
Well, thank you, Lynn, for that nice introduction. If I ever got a preview of my eulogy, that definitely was it. Thank you for reminding me of some of the things that I have done. I definitely wear a lot of hats in our community, to say the least, and obviously in our state and in our region, fire is a main priority, not just here in Auburn, not just for all of us Placer County residents, but for all Californians. And so, as Lynn mentioned, I work for CalFire, have worked for the department since I was 18 years old. So this has been my career, my entire life. In my job that I have now, I oversee most of our fire prevention programs. So we'll dive into some of those, but defensible space, home hardening, a lot of the topics that are making the news. And of course, California and wildfires makes the news every summer, unfortunately. And that's very likely not to change this year, as I'll get into in a little bit. But tonight I want to give you an overview of the situation of California, why we're experiencing more wildfires, what's the root cause. The media and even the politicians like to really reiterate certain things. And to be honest with you, there's not one problem, there's a lot. And there's not one solution. It's a multi-phase solution. So talk a little bit about what we as a department are doing to combat wildfires. It's been in the news just this week. The governor signed a major bill, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But as I mentioned, politically, wildfires have been at the top of the radar. A lot of political officials like to use that We've heard everything from rake the forest to climate change, and really the effects of climate change, overgrown forests, and even prolonged drought. They've all really resulted in the conditions that we're experiencing. And the conditions are not just the fact that we're seeing a lot of fires, but we're seeing unprecedented tree mortality. If you've driven up to anywhere along the Sierra, specifically the Central Sierra, up outside of Fresno, for example, the Yosemite area, there are dead trees, just millions of dead trees across California. So the tree mortality, overall, all these other causes are not just increasing the number of fires, but also the size of fires and the severity of fires. It really is. It has a lot of overall, impacts that we are experiencing. Now, in the fire service and even the media, it always gets kind of played up as an old adage that this is going to be the worst fire season ever. And unfortunately, in California, that really has been the case. It seems like every year is the worst. Now, the worst fire season is always relative, right? If your home is destroyed, if there's a fire in your backyard, it's going to be the worst fire season that you may have experienced. And so it is all relative, but sadly, California really has broken and set many records in just the last few years. In fact, last year alone, and actually I'm going to put on my screen just as a visual aid as I talk here real quick. This is our website. Hopefully it is coming up, but here's some stats that you can see from last year, 2020. 4.2 million acres burned in 10,000 or so fires. 4.2 million acres, just to give you an idea. The year before that was the record was really about 1.8 million, or excuse me, just over 1 million acres was a lot at one point. 1 million acres just a few years ago would have been a record-setting year and would go into the history books. But here we have 4.2 million acres, just a huge amount of land being destroyed. Now, to kind of put it into perspective so that you can kind of understand, the state really is about 100 million acres. So if you take 100, do a little math, you don't have to be a mathematician to know 4.2 is about 4% of the state of California. So it's still an overall small percentage of California that's burning, but still we have not seen numbers like this in post-European civilization. I differentiate that because prior to the Europeans settling in California, California did experience huge amounts of fire, but most of them were controlled, and especially our indigenous people here in California used fire to manage the land. It kept the soil healthy. It kept opportunities for them to have crops. And so California was much more managed, and even naturally, Mother Nature as well allowed for fires to burn. And that doesn't really happen anymore. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the two next stats that you see to the right are really the ones that are the sad ones. 33 people died last year. Over 10,000 structures, homes were destroyed. The 10,000 homes is hard to fathom, but it really is not the record itself. Neither is the fatalities. The Camp Fire had the record amount of fatalities in 2018, as well as in 2016. Those were 2 years where we saw it combined almost 40,000 homes. 40,000 people lost their homes. I mean, it's just huge numbers. And so, I show you these numbers just to kind of give you an idea of how devastating the last year was. But again, this is on several years of overall fires. And really the loss of life and the loss of structures is at an all-time high. There's absolutely no doubt. And in turn, I should say, CalFire, we have really set a focus upon increasing the pace and scale of fire prevention activities. This is a key element of battling these destructive and deadly fires. And I'll go into what fire prevention all entails, but we have a strategic plan in California. We updated it in 2018. So just at the kind of heat or the peak here of some of the more deadly fire years. And this plan specifically calls out the importance of fire prevention. Now, of course, this is the world that I live in, trying to to prevent them. My father-in-law, of course, likes to mention that I do a really bad job because we've had several years where fire prevention has not worked. But we are really trying to ramp that up and really have done a lot, but we are working against Mother Nature. We are working against a change in our climate that it's going to take probably decades for us to turn around. So despite any criticism of not being able to prevent fires, it's still, it is still a growing problem that we are working towards. So our work overall is to reduce the impact and the threat of these wildfires. That is part of our mission. We have a strong response. We get a lot of media coverage when there is a fire, when fire engines are responding, when there's air tankers and helicopters in the air and smoke affecting people's air quality. It makes the news. But we are spending all winter long, all spring long, focused on really trying to prevent that, really trying to reduce that severity. And so really in the past few years, we have doubled down on our efforts. In fact, in the last 10 years, we have nearly doubled the number of acres that we are treating by fuel reduction, manually going in, cutting down the dead trees in many areas. Now, as I mentioned, there are tens of millions of trees that are dead in California. And so we're not going to remove all of those trees. There's just no way to. But trees that are along the roadways, for example, highways, infrastructure like utility lines. These are the areas where we have been working very hard the last several years. So to Barbara's question about the tree mortality, yes, we are clearing trees. Millions of trees have been cleared. It creates new problems. What do you do with all the trees? There is biomass facilities, and there's been a lot of work by the state to try to incentivize that. But you really have to have a biomass facility close by in order to use those trees to create power generation, to even out as a fiscally sound way of producing energy. But again, our tree removal focus is really along roadways. We want to make sure evacuation routes are clear. We want to make sure that around communities, we don't have trees falling down on people and on homes. And so that's where we've really focused our fuel reduction efforts, as well as putting in fuel breaks. These are strategic places where we've removed vegetation. And when I say remove vegetation, I don't mean all of it. We really like what we call shaded fuel breaks, which means we still have big trees, but we've removed the grass, the brush, the smaller trees, and turned it into more of like a park-like setting. You go to a park, parks are beautiful, right? Very low grass, trees that are limbed up, but they're still trees. That for us is the perfect forest conditions. And so we really have worked to put in a lot more fuel breaks around communities so that when a fire does occur, if the fire burns into these fuel breaks, it slows the fire's progression down because it doesn't have as much vegetation to burn. It allows us to get in there, take a stand to just hold back the fire. So again, we've doubled the amount of acres being treated by fuel reduction. We've tripled the amount of acres that we are treating through prescribed burning. That's been a long topic of why don't you do more prescribed burning? And there's been a lot of issues and we've been working through them. Liability is one of them. Putting fire on the ground is a risk. If the conditions are not perfect, if conditions change because the weather is sometimes unpredictable, prescribed burning can get out of hand. And there have been a lot of situations across the nation where prescribed fire has actually destroyed homes or even caused wildfires. And so we really have to use targets of opportunity. However, we've really been focused more on putting more fire on the ground because fire is actually the tool that helps us stop fire. Fire is natural. A lot of our native plants actually really need fire in order for the weaker brush or bushes or competing trees and bushes to clear out. You know, one of the problems with an overgrown forest, and a lot of people in the city think that the perfect forest is where you can't see anything but trees. In reality, that's not the case because when trees are so compacted and growing so close together, they're competing for sunlight, they're competing for water. And in years like this, where we are in drought, there's not enough water to go around. And so the bigger trees may be able to get that water, but the smaller trees may not. And those smaller trees may be the native ones, and the bigger ones may be non-native species that are more fire prone, meaning they burn easier, they burn faster. And so the native vegetation is much more adapt to wildfires. They can withstand fires, but when they are crowded out by brush and by other vegetation that's not native, but is able to grow around them faster or above them, it takes away that sun, it takes away that water, and then they become weak. They become more susceptible to drought. So they're more likely to be susceptible to things like bark beetle and other insect infestations. We've also really increased our defensible space inspections, the amount of homes that we're going around inspecting, making sure that they're in compliance with some of the specific laws that require clearance. In fact, if you live in a rural area, you are required by law to have 100 feet of defensible space. Back to a fuel break, defensible space doesn't mean bare dirt all the way around the home. What it does mean, though, is that anything that's dead or dying has been removed. So annual grasses, i.e. weeds, tree branches that have died, making sure trees are limbed up, spacing out those trees, spacing out your bushes. All of those are critical parts of defensible space. In recent years, we've also really been able to get a lot of money out on the ground for fire prevention projects. Not only have we been able to hire more firefighters and even designated crews to do these fire prevention activities. In fact, we have specific crews that we hire, and their job, especially in the springtime and in the fall months and the winter months, is to go out and do prescribed burning, to go out and clear brush. And that is their sole job. They're not necessarily firefighters, though they are trained to fight fire and they may respond here and there. Their sole job is dedicated to doing fuel reduction work. But we've also facilitated over $100 million in grants for local fire prevention projects. So communities across our area, Placer County is one of them. Placer County got a grant from CalFire, and one of those grants was to fund a chipper program. So Placer County, through the Resource Conservation District, provides for a very minimal charge a chipping service so that you can call up and say, hey, I have a bunch of branches, and they'll come out or get you scheduled and actually chip them for you and leave the mulch for you to use in your garden or wherever. So these grants go towards ensuring that we have fire prevention work being done at the local level, not just by us. Now, $100 million in the last several years in fire prevention projects, I thought, if you had asked me last year, was a huge amount of money. $100 million is a lot of money that my team manages in projects. However, just this week, the governor and the legislature announced a deal, and the governor signed this week a budget that goes into effect immediately that essentially puts $500 million into forest health and fire prevention activities. This is above and beyond what the things that we as a department are doing in fuel reduction. This is extra money to do even more work. Now, $500 million right now, and then they are still working on a budget deal for next fiscal year, which starts in just a few months in July, for almost another $500 million. So in just the next several months, we as an agency will be given an extra $1 billion towards funding and resources specifically designated for fuel reduction crews, for fire prevention activities, forest health projects. And so a lot of money is coming down the pike for this effort. Now, it's really important to note that California has a dry Mediterranean climate, which naturally lends itself to wildfires, and it has for centuries. As I mentioned, wildfires occurred well before European civilization of California. It was here well before us, but times have changed. Things are very different. There's a larger population. The climate is different. There's a lot more people who have moved in to wildland-urban interface areas. And so the way we treat wildfire and the way we treat the forest is very different. Now, I have to just, because forest management was a big political debate last year between the president and our governor, it's really important for me to mention to you that most of the forest land, let me rephrase that, all the government forest land, let me rephrase it again, almost all the government-owned forest land in California, in fact, about 50% of our forest, is owned by the federal government. The state actually owns and manages about 3% of the forest land. So almost 50% is managed by the U.S. Forest Service, the Park Service, and some other federal agencies. There's private companies that own a good chunk of that as well, and then private residents. But excuse me, back to the not to get into politics, though I know that's what you guys do best. But the president coming out here saying California needs to rake the forest. He's right that we need to do more at forest management, but we, being California, is not really accurate. It's we being the landowners of California, which is the U.S. Forest Service and our federal partners, which I just have to say the Forest Service does the best they can. But to be honest with you, they struggle financially in their budget to even do the basic things that they do. They are not built to be a emergency response agency. And so they often deplete their entire budget solely responding to wildfires. And so they can't do forest management work. So it is a very complicated effort, but I just have to put that plug in because a lot of people, probably you as well, made fun of the president, former president, when he came out and told us to rake our forests. He wasn't wrong, but he also didn't understand that was his own department's responsibilities. Anyways, we are taking every step, though, as I mentioned, to try to prevent and suppress human-caused fires. And by doing that, we also have to adapt to wildfires. Again, wildfires are not just going to go away. They were here before us. They'll happen after us. Mother Nature needs them. So we have to learn how to adapt to wildfires. And adapting to wildfires really is a systematic approach, meaning that there's not one solution, as I mentioned at the very beginning. There's a number of efforts. And so I'll go through a few of those. One, it means that we have to start ensuring that our forests are healthier. Federal government forests, the privately owned forest, and the 3% of forest land that the state owns through state parks and my department, CalFire. We do have some forest land as well. We have to manage those forests better. We need to clear them out. They are overgrown. They need to be be addressed. And so forest management is a huge component of the department's focus right now, as well as the budget that I mentioned to you. But it also means ensuring that our communities are built where they're hardened against wildfire. So that could mean ensuring that our infrastructure grid is hardened so that it's not susceptible as much to wildfires being destroyed. I'll give an example, and I know so it looks like Rick and Sue asked the question about how much progress has been done for the potential reducing the potential of our electricity. Some of the issues with the distribution lines, right? It's no secret that PG&E has been specifically, but other utilities as well, have caused a lot of the wildfires as of late. We've seen a pretty significant amount of electrical caused wildfires. And so hardening their systems is their responsibility. But what that means is clearing vegetation around it, which is how most of these fires that are sparked by electrical uses from a tree that falls down into the power lines. By law, the utilities are required to clear vegetation so that they don't fall into the power lines. But for a number of reasons, that is not mine to necessarily get into, though I do oversee our utility mitigation program, utilities have kind of fallen on their vegetation clearance and really have stepped up in the last couple of years, I will note. And they've really increased their efforts to do that for obvious reasons, because paying out billions of dollars in settlements versus clearing out vegetation around their lines, there's a pretty big financial difference between those two. But hardening their infrastructure also includes making sure that they don't have wood poles, for example, in high fire areas, using metal poles or using treated lines so that if a fire does burn in that area, the infrastructure is hardened and is less likely to be damaged and keeping the electrical line going. And so making sure our communities are hardened, and this includes putting fuel breaks around communities, as I mentioned, making sure we have proper evacuation routes, adequate water supply, adequate fire protection. All of these ensure our communities are more hardened and are more resistant to wildfires. At the home level, at the property-based level, we also want to make sure that our homes are being built to a higher standard. And I'll talk about that in a moment, what that means, hardening a home, but also making sure homes have good defensible space. So in what I just gave is really 3 kind of levels: the home, which includes defensible space, the community, fuel breaks, hardened infrastructure, and then the forest. And if we address all 3 of those, that's going to help us really make a dent at reducing the severity, reducing the damage from wildfires. Now, I mentioned the hardening of homes, and if you haven't heard that term, it's going to become a lot more frequent as more homes are destroyed, and we have to address how do we stop burning down communities? How do we stop burning down tens of thousands of homes? Now, California arguably has some of the most stringent wildland building codes in the world. In fact, the International Building Code for Wildland Urban Interface really is modeled after California. Since 2008, so not that long, we're going on just over 10 years, but since 2008, any new construction within California's wildland areas, and a wildland area, I should say wildland urban interface. This is where the forest and the urban city meet, that area in between where there are trees and homes that collide. Almost all of Placer County arguably is a wildland urban interface, minus downtown Lincoln, downtown Roseville. But on the outskirts, those are wildland urban interface where vegetation, grass, brush, trees meet urban cities. That wildland urban interface areas under law, under the building code, are required to be built out of building materials that are ember resistant. So homes built in these areas have to have things like double pane windows, for example. The screens that are on the attic vents need to be smaller so embers can't get in. I'll give a few other examples here in a minute, but essentially we're building these homes out of materials that can resist embers. Embers being the things that rain down from wildfires, and those embers are really good at finding the weak spot in construction, something flammable at the home, and then that's what causes the home to burn down. In fact, a lot of people think that most homes burn down because the fire burns up to it, and once the fire burns to the home, catches the home on fire, and that's how it's destroyed. And that's not really the case. A lot of times fires are over here, sometimes a mile away from the subdivision or homes, and the embers carried by the wind rain down and land just like snowflakes, beautiful snowflakes that are hot and destructive, land on these homes, land on the roof, land on weak spots on the bed around the home, and ignite the home on fire. So the home burns from the embers. And so we want to make sure that if an ember lands on a home, and I say a ember, but usually it's going to be thousands of firebrands, thousands of embers, that the material is able to withstand, and eventually embers all go out, right? Eventually it burns, whatever it is that's burning, it goes out, loses oxygen, whatever. And as long as that building material can resist igniting, we're good. But the big problem is that most homes were built before 2008. And so a lot of the homes in the forested areas in the wildland urban interface are built prior to the current building codes. And so how we address retrofitting homes, how we address getting these homes caught up is the initiative we've been under. Last year, we released what we're calling a low-cost retrofit list. I'm actually going to switch over to our website real quick and show it to you. And I'll go more on this website in a bit and explain things. Oh, I haven't started sharing my screen. Sorry, hold on. I started to go to the website without sharing. This is a great website that has a lot of resources. It's called readyforwildfire.org. I'll put it in the chat here in a moment, but it's a real good website if you've never been to it to get some good information about what do you do to prevent fire, prepare for fire. But on our website we have a whole section on hardening your home and what that means to ensure that your home is hardened. As it comes up here on the screen, I won't play this video. Actually, that's not the video. Yeah, I want to show you. But right here, I wanted to bring your attention. Hopefully you're following me. Sorry if I'm going too fast. But right on this home hardening page, there is a low-cost retrofit list. And this low-cost retrofit list, we went through and found 10 things that are relatively inexpensive that you can do yourself to really reduce your overall threat to wildfire. Hopefully you can see that all right. I won't go through all of these, but here's a couple of them that I'll go that are very simple but very effective additions. This one right here I highlighted: cover all vent openings with a 1/16 to a 1/8 inch non-combustible, corrosion-resistant metal mesh. So what does that mean? There are vents in your home to help the heat escape it. A lot of times up in the attic, for example, you have these vents to allow the heat from the top of your home get out and allow some airflow. But those embers can go right through those vents. So by having a very small opening metal mesh, it prevents the embers from being able to get inside. You can go to your local hardware store for under $10 yourself, buy this metal mesh, cut it to the exact size you want it, and use a staple gun or some other way to connect it to the vent itself, and voila, you have significantly increased your home's chance of surviving a wildfire. So I would highly recommend that you look at this. Even if you live in a subdivision, if you are near a open grass area, which, you know, Lincoln is surrounded by it, you're going to want to take these steps, because if you look at Santa Rosa, if you even look at the middle of Paradise, these are communities where people thought that, you know, they were in the center, they were in the urban part, they weren't going to see a problem. But again, those embers can travel a mile away, and so it definitely should be and is a concern if you live there. I just put in the chat. Oh, I just sent it to only Fred. Just put in the chat now to everybody that website. So go to it later. If I'm boring you, you can go back there now. But that website has a lot of good information. And to be honest with you, we are constantly changing the building code. Every cycle, we add things to it. We're constantly looking at new technologies, new products, new ways of doing things. And so our code development is always undergoing, and we're always adopting new requirements in the code to make sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that these homes don't burn. Now, I want to dive into a little bit of how do fires start, because this is another place that you could really help us. 95% of all the wildfires we respond to are actually caused by the activity of people, which means that almost every single wildfire that we respond to is actually preventable. And, you know, sometimes that's hard to think about, that almost all fires are caused by people. The electrical line one we gave, that is an impact from people. Obviously, the average homeowner didn't start that, but all of these types of, most of these types of fires are preventable. I'm going to share my screen again and go through a few of the very common, places where wildfires are started. And so this is our section on fire prevention, and you can see here some examples. Equipment use. The lawnmower here, this is a very common one, especially in Lincoln. And I don't mean residents who are in maybe Sun City, but the surrounding area. We often will see lawnmowers, weed trimmers that with a metal blade, tractors, where people are trying to cut down the grass, but they use the wrong tool. You can see this lawnmower has a metal blade likely underneath it. That metal blade hits a rock, and what happens? You have a spark. If you've got dry grass, spark and dry grass equals fire. And so people actually trying to do the right thing, reducing the vegetation, cutting down the grass, but they do it with the wrong tool, because a metal blade on a cutting grass is not a good idea, especially in the spring, the summer, the fall months. In the winter, not a big deal when the grass is green and it's cool out. But even this time of year, using equipment like this can actually be dangerous. Here's another common one, debris burning. It is legal in many areas, not all communities, but in many areas, to burn excess branches and even leaves. So in an effort to get rid of your vegetation on your property, in many areas, especially in the rural areas, you can burn that debris. But if you do it where the pile is too big, if you do it during a time period where it's windy, that debris burn or that vegetation can actually easily spread and cause a wildfire. Another very common cause this time of year in our region is that debris burning. Vehicle use, you can see on the right, this is another one, not as common, but it is a frequent one where anything from a metal chain dragging from a vehicle that connects to a trailer, for example. A lot of trailers have metal chains to connect to the vehicle. If that chain comes loose and you drag that chain, it's going to cause sparks. We've had vehicles that they have a low tire or even a flat tire. You would think that, well, it's flat, pull over. Well, some people are not as smart as others. And so driving on the rims of your vehicle can cause sparks and start fires. So making sure your vehicle is properly maintained is an important one. Here's some others. I won't really go through all of them, but again, the bottom line here is most fires are caused by the activity of people, debris burning, equipment use, vehicle, electrical power, even arson are some of the leading causes. I hit on defensible space, but I want to expand on that just a little bit. Defensible space is removing dead or dying vegetation. We don't want to see, again, bare dirt around your home. We like to see green grass, but low green grass, maintained so it's only a couple inches tall. We like to see brush or bushes, plants. We like to see trees, but we need to space them out, making sure that if a fire does occur and it does burn down one tree, that tree has enough room that it's not going to easily spread to the next one. And so making sure you have some distance between your trees, your bushes is important. You can also make sure that you're planting with plants that are more fire resistant. And there are a number of different varieties. You can go to your local nursery and talk to them, and they can help you with items. The great thing about fire resistant plants is they tend to be drought tolerant plants. And so it's kind of a win-win in California. Now, anything will burn under the right temperature and under the right conditions, but fire resistant plants are less likely to burn. And so that's where, having those around your home, are very important. I want to talk about this year, the forecast for 2021. Already, most of California is in an abnormally dry to exceptional drought category. So we are definitely going down this path of seeing some pretty strong drought conditions across much of California. At the beginning of the month, the Department of Water Resources did their annual snow survey and water content, and they reported that the statewide snowpack is just 59% of average for this time of year. So very little rainfall, very little snowpack, and we're starting to dry out much earlier than we should. Drought conditions really starting to take a hold. Our fires, as a result, have already increased. In fact, we've seen almost 1,000 fires already in really just the first 3.5 months that have burned 3,000 acres. So not a lot of land, but we've already started to see fires. That is an increase, by the way, of about 300 fires. So we are already seeing more fire activity this year than we did last year. And again, spoiler alert, last year was pretty bad. So not looking good at all. So overall, our vision as a state and our plan is to make sure that our natural environment is more fire resilient. We want to make sure the forest is resilient to fire, that the trees are healthy enough they can resist the destruction of fire. We want to make our homes and our infrastructure more fire resistant, meaning they can't burn, that they are able to withstand embers, that fire can just burn around them. And we really have to shape society's awareness of the threats. And that's why I really appreciate being here tonight and to really talk about the mitigations that are underway. But back to that role, because listen, at CalFire, arguably, and not arguably, we, without a doubt, have some of the best, coolest fire equipment in the world. We have Black Hawk helicopters that have just come online as the best helicopters for fighting fire in the world. We have the largest air fleet. I like to brag because California really has the biggest fire department in the world for wildfires. We're the third largest fire department in the country. New York and Chicago are larger than the department, but we have the largest wildland fire department. We have the largest air fleet. In fact, we have more aircraft in California that we own and operate than the entire federal government does to cover all 50 states. And I tell you that not to brag, though again, we have some pretty cool equipment, but it's more about really understanding that we too, as residents, have roles to play, making sure that we're building smarter, that we are ensuring that we are taking extra steps to be safe outdoors to prevent sparking a fire. And so it really is this kind of all of the above approach. It's not just the forest and raking the forest. It's not just climate change, it's everything. And that's really has got to be the solution, is doing a little bit of everything. So with that, I'm gonna start going through, if Fred is good, I'll go through some of these questions and see if we can hammer them out. And then if there's still time, throw it in the chat log or however you guys usually do. But I do wanna get caught up on a few of these. So Karen, hello Karen, I don't see you on my screen right now, but Karen A. Hughes asked about what can you do for the federal government to take care of their portion of the forest? Great question. So CalFire and the U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service, we work very well together. As I mentioned, it's a resource issue. Now, just in this past month, the state weighed in and set, as we have done in many years in the past, but we sent our state senators and our congressional leaders a letter saying, listen, you've got to fund the Forest Service. You have got to really change the way the Forest Service is funded, but also managed. The federal Forest Service doesn't actually have any firefighters. They have a classification that they make fight fire, but these individuals work more of a 40-hour work week. They go home at night. When a fire occurs at night in many areas, these Forest Service stations are closed. And so making sure that they're actually staffed as a fire department, paying their firefighters true firefighter wages is important. Making sure they have enough money in their fire response so that they're not taking it away from their forest management concerns, their recreation needs, their fire prevention needs. And so the state really has tried to do a lot to weigh in. Of course, you know, politics are what they are. And when we've had times where two different parties at the state level and at Washington don't always see eye to eye, and that makes it difficult. New administration, obviously, in town, and it'll be interesting what changes are made to the Forest Service. But California and CalFire definitely weighing in to support our federal partners here. Let me keep going through these questions here real quick. I mentioned some of the question about what progress has been done to reduce the potential of electricity distribution systems causing wildfires. So the utilities are really under the microscope for obvious reasons. After some of the deadly fires in the North Bay, for example, there was a new requirement that utilities had to submit an annual wildfire mitigation plan. And these are very lengthy plans, and not just plans that sit on a shelf, but lay out the steps they're going to take to clear vegetation around their land, harden their infrastructure, and then hold them accountable and report back to them. My team that I oversee, we have actually dedicated chiefs who work with the Public Utilities Commission and work with the utilities to make sure that their plans are strong and that they're following through with their plans. Problem is, they've gone probably decades with choosing, my words, not theirs, profits over vegetation management and infrastructure change. And so it's going to take decades to get caught up. You can't just fix a system overnight. But work is being done. I'll give you an example. Southern California Edison had a bad year last year. Not in starting fires per se, but power safety shutoffs has become the new fun thing for them to reduce their risk. Yeah, okay, shutting down the power, you're not going to have a fire when there's no power, right? They're not going to start fires when they shut off power. But can any of you live without power? Maybe you could live, but there are people who require power to survive. In the middle of summer, you need air conditioning, right? We pay good money in a society that we live in to be able to have electricity 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and not wonder if it's going to be turned on and off. And so the utilities have really relied heavily the last couple of years on just shutting off the power. And we believe at the state that they're shutting off the power too frequently, that they're relying on power shutoffs more than they're relying on actually clearing the vegetation to prevent trees from falling into their lines. Southern California Edison shut off the power too much last year. They meet with us and the Public Utilities Commission every single week to talk about where have they cleared, what are they doing so that they're not shutting off the power? The ultimate goal by the state is that power safety shutoffs are a thing of the past. This year, they are planning, if they need to shut off the power. But PG&E has also spent a lot of time in our region, but really across the state, they call it sectionalizing areas, so that more urban areas can remain on, but the areas that are really at the highest risk, they can shut off. And those areas may be where there aren't a lot of people. And so trying to reduce the overall impact. I remember in time is with the pandemic, it's hard to remember time, but in 2019, during some of the power safety shutoffs, the wind was projected in the canyon, but all the way down into some parts of Rockland, the power got shut off. Well, I'm sorry, a line in Rockland is not going to spark a fire. But because all of the lines were so interconnected, they couldn't shut off the high risk area up in Colfax, for example, without shutting off power in Rockland. So they've really done a good job of making sure the core of urban areas are sectionalized, and even in communities like Colfax, I use that as an example, they've put Colfax on its own little mini grid. So the town of Colfax itself has its own little grid and doesn't necessarily have to require transmission from power coming from another area. And it's those transmission lines in those rural areas where most of the utility problems have occurred. So that was a long way of saying, yes, progress is being made. We have to hold them accountable to doing more and ensuring that they stay on top of clearing their vegetation. Because guess what? Vegetation grows back. Every year the weeds grow back. Every year the trees get larger. And so it will be a never-ending issue to ensure that it's infrastructure, that their vegetation is cleared properly. Now, one solution that is easily said but not easily done is this idea of undergrounding the lines. And a lot of the utilities have worked to underground lines where they can, but it is so costly that it becomes really pretty much cost prohibitive. That yes, it may be safer underground, but then you have a whole host of other issues, because we have a lot of problems in California with other utilities where even homeowners using a tractor or something dig in the ground, cut the electricity line, cut the power, the gas lines, for example. And so putting them underground, yes, reduces fire risk, but it does create other issues that have to be addressed. So, that's important. Barbara, you had a really good question here. Is there a plan to update the alert system? Many people perish because there weren't enough notification to evacuate. And you are dead on. Santa Rosa was a really good example of that. The fires in Santa Rosa a number of years ago occurred in the middle of the night. Sadly, most people had already gone to bed by the time that fire broke out. And that fire spread in the middle of the night into the communities. And so people were asleep. So there has been a lot of work to really enhance the reverse 911 systems, and specifically the text messaging system. You may have noticed on your phone, you're getting a lot more, or should be, alerts from CHP. Most of the alerts are for Amber Alerts, missing children. But last year there were, I think, 2, 3, 4 in our area where they were looking for suspects or an Amber Alert. And so there's been a lot of increased usage of our cell phones to send out Amber Alerts to alert people. In wildfires, they will do the same thing. It is a continued problem. One of the things a lot of law enforcement agencies have done here more recently is switch to this new trend or idea of a high-low siren. And a high-low siren, I'll Google it really quick because I don't want to do the sound without sounding like an idiot here. But a high-low siren sounds very similar to what you would hear a European ambulance sound. Not very common in our area. But the siren, they're trying to, see if I can get it to play. Actually, this is from Santa Rosa, funny enough, the video I played. See if it plays and you can hear it.
Hi, this is Raider Navarro. So when you hear
So very distinct, right? You don't hear that siren very often. And so the theory and what they're pushing for is for law enforcement agencies to use that siren to drive around neighborhoods to try to alert people. So using reverse 911 more frequently, because that was one of the issues in Santa Rosa they found was they didn't want to over alert people. And we had that in Auburn. We had a fire, and unfortunately the sheriff's department, the area that they alerted was way larger than the fire itself. And so trying to redefine, and that is important, and I roll my eyes too, Barbara. It is kind of, listen, it's better to be over alerted than under alerted, right? That's what happened in Santa Rosa. They were too afraid to hit the button because they didn't want too many people to be alerted, not knowing the fire was going to just come through town and, destroy everything. But there is a risk, and people do get injured if they don't need to be evacuated. We don't want to put even more people on the street if they're completely in a different area. So work has been done to really refine that. Now, if you haven't already, in our county and in our cities, there's a system called Placer Alerts. I think it's placeralerts.org. Let me look it up real quick before I give you that. And I'll put the website in the chat. But essentially, that is equivalent to the reverse 911 system. And what that means is that when there is an emergency, and it's not just fires, but they've used it when, in our area at least, when a person goes missing, it essentially sends a message to your phone, a phone call. And so you actually get a phone call that tells you whatever the emergency is and gives you instructions on what to do. I'm going to put it in the chat here as well, but it's placer/alert.org. Make sure you register your cell phone. The trend has become, and actually in my home here, when we moved, I don't have a landline anymore. Because cell phones are becoming even more popular, there's a big population that doesn't have a landline telephone. And so you may have a cell phone from a different area, and the local police departments, they don't know about it. So by registering Placer Alert, you give your address and you put in your cell phone number or your home number too. You can still register home numbers, but it helps them to, so when they draw on the map the area they want to alert, it will call you and say, this is the Placer County Sheriff's Department. There is a fire in this area. Evacuate now. And so that is another thing that has been in our region, but really across the state, really worked on. So reverse 911, just not to get in the weeds, but reverse 911 is a specific product. In our area, it's the placeralert.org. But again, it's the calling you and telling you with a message. It's the high-low siren. And it's the text messages that you get on your phone. And if any of you just looking at you, did any of you get the text messages from CHP last year? It is the most loud, obnoxious alarm. I freaked out because I didn't know what it was, but it gets your attention. It is definitely, your cell phone is set up. Now, just so you know, you can actually go into the settings and change things around. So you might want to make sure that in the settings of your cell phone, you are set up properly to get those notifications when they go off, because if you're not prepared for that sound, it is very annoying. So, Barbara, real quick, and then I'll go back to some questions. Does your alert follow you if you buy a new phone? No, a new phone, yes, but if you change your number, you really need to register your number anytime you move. When you move or you get a new number, change it. Steve, a great question. Does bark mulch around homes create an increased fire risk? Short answer, yes. Bark mulch has become a very popular, especially in the drought, form of getting rid of green grass, for example. But what we are finding is a lot of fires, especially in Paradise. We did a significant amount of research after the Paradise fire. And one of the very common reasons the homes burned down in Paradise was because the mulch right around the home, touching the home itself, the mulch really just allowed the fire to burn right through it because it's wood, right? It's a wood product. There's a new law that went into effect this year. It's called Assembly Bill 3074. And it's requiring the department, and so we don't have it rolled out yet, but we'll be actually developing in part of our public education materials a 0 to 5 foot zone. And essentially, it's very likely that mulch will not be allowed within the first 5 feet around your home. We're not banning mulch by any means. Again, mulch has a lot of really great usages, but we're making sure that it is spread out. Other flammable vegetation, we really want to see plants and vegetation at least 5 feet separated so that if those plants catch on fire, it doesn't immediately spread to the home. So the answer is yes, bark mulch does increase your fire risk, but it's that first 5 feet that we're worried about the most. Steve, you also had a question, can the dead and dying trees be harvested for lumber by logging companies? The answer is yes. The problem is there's really not a marketplace for them here in California. We've seen so much of a decline in the wood products industry in California that there aren't lumber mills to the same quantity we had 20 years ago. There really isn't the infrastructure. And unfortunately, it's cheaper and easier, crazy enough, to have wood shipped over on boats from China to our state. And so we see a lot of wood products coming from other states. And so the answer is yes, the dead and dying trees are still strong. They can still be used to build homes and do other things, but the marketplace is just not there. We are spending a lot of time. We've got several new programs in the last 5 years or so to try to build marketplaces, but that is something that makes it difficult. Jay and Linda, great question. I didn't mention lightning for causes of fires. Lightning causes about 5% of wildfires in California, so a very small percentage. 2020, a lot of lightning sparked fires. That was one of the issues in 2020 was, if you remember mid-August, we had triple-digit temperatures, right? We had this heat dome over California, triple-digit temperatures. We had a lightning storm come in the middle of summer, and when lightning storms come in summer, sends lightning, no rain. So it sparks wildfires. But on average, lightning only starts about 5% of the fires. Again, last year, it was a pretty a big deal. Karen, thanks for the comment about my baby. For those of you who don't know, in the middle of this pandemic, I have a newborn baby. So thank you for that. He's crying in the other room, so glad you can't hear him. I know we're running out of time. Alan Carroll, is Blue Canyon Airport the only CAL FIRE facility in Placer County? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. CAL FIRE does have fire stations across Placer County. We have one in Lincoln, in Auburn, in Forest Hill. Our air base locally here is in Grass Valley. Grass Valley is where our air tankers fly out of, as well as Sacramento. In McClellan is where we have our large air tankers. And I know I'm running out of time here real quick, but one of the cool things we've been able to do is we just acquired 6 large C-130. These are the real big military aircraft. The Coast Guard, funny enough, bought these aircraft and then decided, you know, they're too big for us. And so the federal government didn't know what to do with these huge C-130 airplanes. And so we were like, hey, we'll take them. So years and years of bureaucracy, we just got these huge airplanes. We're retrofitting them so that they can fight fire. And one will be based out of Sacramento. And so you'll see aircraft, as you do all summer long, the big stuff you see, I know I'm at 8, the big aircraft you see fly out of Sacramento. So Sacramento and Grass Valley are our 2 air bases. When a helicopter comes, it usually comes out of the Chico area. That's the closest CAL FIRE helicopter base. But our air bases and helicopters, they're all based so that we can reach anywhere in the state within 20 minutes. So a pretty fast time. So I'm out of time. Thank you so much for the invitation. I know it's very timely with fire season around the corner. Please go in the comments feed chat before you leave and take those 2 websites, readyforwildfire.org and placer/alert.org. 2 websites. I really hope you spend more time. And thank you all. I'll put my email in if you have any questions, but I appreciate the time tonight to chat with you, and hopefully didn't bore you too much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Dan. It's been our privilege to have you as our guest, and boy, you certainly did not disappoint. Thank you so very much. Best of luck to you and to CAL FIRE. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Really good, really good. Thank you so much. Okay.
Well done.
I put my email in the chat too, so feel free to email me. This is my City of Auburn email, but if you have questions, happy to help answer them or get you in contact with the Lincoln Fire Safe Council or wherever you live. But have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So thank you all for coming, and Jay, you want to send everybody out and tell them we'll see them twice in May, huh?
Yeah, twice in May, 2 meetings. So we'll be letting you know. The info will be coming out, so check your email. Thanks for coming tonight, everybody.
Thanks for a great program.
Thank
Great
you.
meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Night.
Good program, great program.